Antifa-Linked Twitter account takes credit for Portland bank arson. Bank of America, B of A. Got torched. Said it was an act of revenge for the Atlanta autonomous zone arrests. That was the cop city where they were fighting to preserve the forest. They were hunkered down for weeks at a time inside the forest and just calmly hanging out in their tree forts. Yeah, no. That wasn't quite the case, right? But that's how they wanted to portray it. Now they want to portray, a little bank arson as, mostly peaceful. I don't know. We're going to have to get into it. Let's jump on into it. Let's see what the deal is. Here we go. Before we keep going, I'd love to have you take a look at reasonabletv.com. That's our paid subscription site. It's where I've got content that you won't find anywhere else, because it would get censored elsewhere. So if you believe in what I do, check out reasonabletv.com. Here's what our members only section looks like. And we've got content there. There's all kinds of stuff there that for one reason or another, you're not going to find it elsewhere. Thanks for taking a look. Much appreciated. Here's what the arsonist said, anonymously, of course. And is Antifa do they even exist? I mean, we were told that they were a myth, right? Geez, this myth seems to be lighting banks on fire right now. Building tree forts and living in tree forts in the woods in Atlanta. Mostly as a myth. I attack for revenge against Capitol for the hell it creates. To break the illusion of police control that usually protects it. And just because I can. So this individual lights a bank on fire just because he can. Bank of America funds the Atlanta Police Foundation and 1,000 other projects of control. Whew. So what you do, apparently, if you're in this position, is you light stuff on fire. Okay. All right. This is from Post Millennial. This is Andy No's gig. He didn't write this one, but he's got a bunch of links in here, some Twitter stuff. We'll get into it. Following a fire at a Portland Bank of America branch on Saturdays last weekend, an anonymous person is taking credit for starting the fire, saying that the fire was started in retaliation for domestic terrorism charges brought against 5 militants that were a part of a violent occupation of land in South Atlanta. We talked about that. I think I did at least a couple of podcasts on that one. So then he goes on to talk about broke into it and started a large fire. Fire grew quickly and took firefighters more than an hour to extinguish. If you're writing about this and if you're proud that it took an hour to extinguish a building that you set fire to, okay. Yeah, I understand you've got your ideology, but the rest of us, tax-paying citizens and business owners and whatnot, not that I'm thinking the far left views as being in total control, along with the police organizations, judges, and, the whole judicial system. Yeah, pretty wacky stuff. It's like, okay, I'm going to light a bank on fire. And also, lit it on fire just because he can. I think that says a lot right there, right? Just utter disrespect for anything. Anything goes. Just going to light it on fire. So Andy No's got a tweet. The attacker says it was done as retribution for the domestic terrorism charges against militants in the autonomous zone in Atlanta. Yeah, you can see some of these photos. I mean, this bad boy was on fire. I mean, crazy. Okay. Yep. There we go. Not good. Okay. Smoke. Didn't see any major flames. Oh, yeah, that's where they broke in. Smoke damage can be just as bad, right? I mean, you can just destroy a place. You can't get that smoke smell out of anything. Cause of the fire is being investigated by the Portland Fire Investigations Unit, and police confirm that the fire is being investigated as arson. Far-left extremists from across the country have traveled to the woods that they call Cop City to prevent the construction of the building, and then 5 of them were arrested recently and charged with domestic terrorism. That is what Georgia charged them with. And I was kind of like, that is interesting because we do nothing of the sort here in Seattle or Portland. They just kind of let them go back out and do their thing. Georgia, a little different story. Yeah, going to be handled differently there. Be really interesting to see how that one turns out. Let's go over to Fox. See how Fox covers this. Anonymous leftist militant claims Portland bank fire was revenge for Atlanta arrests. Long live anarchy. All right. There we go. I mean, that's a headline grabber right there. Portland Police Bureau told Fox News Digital that investigators are considering any and all potential evidence as they pursue the suspects in the recent bank arson that caused significant damage to the building. So what I find really interesting with this story, really interesting, is that this happened in Portland as retribution for something that happened in Atlanta. So they get arrested in Atlanta. And where do they hunker down? Portland. Because the folks in Atlanta, they weren't from Atlanta. One kid was. But I don't know how he got mixed up in it. But he didn't really look like, if you saw the mugshots of the 5 that were arrested, you'd go, all right, of these 5, which one doesn't belong in this picture? This kid probably got mixed up. That is my total guess looking at those pictures. And if you look at them, you'll go, okay, that's the one Sean's probably talking about. And you'd be right. But activity happens in Atlanta and then retribution for it happens in Portland. That is the interesting sequence of events, right? Why do it in Portland? Well, because Portland's a comfort zone and you got Rose City Antifa there that's very strong. And, they've pulled this kind of stuff time and time again. And city leadership has done what about it? I mean, how many arrests do we have? Not a ton. You've got some. But for the most part, summer of 2020, we saw how that played out. I mean, that was just, let's try and burn down the federal buildings. And it got so bad that Trump wanted to, send in the feds and everybody freaked out, including the mayor. Mayor Ted now he's trying to get a handle around homelessness, the drug abuse, criminal activity, murders. Portland just, set the record for murders at 96. Last year, record year as well, 90 or 91, somewhere right in there. On fire as far as Portland is talking about fire, talking about, arson here. Portland is on fire for its elevated levels of things that you don't necessarily want in your city. You've literally got stories of individuals who are like, okay, and here's what we keep hearing. I am this close to moving. And so when we start to see that in action, and I'm kind of thinking it's happening right now because we've already seen a whole bunch of businesses close down, but near these residential areas that are near encampments, I've done the podcast on those where we talk about, okay, you've got individuals who are like just scoping things out. They're testing the waters to see what maybe looking away from Portland would be like. And the rest of you put the comments on, just move out of the town. It's a damn dumpster fire, right? I mean, that's kind of the idea. But, you say that about Seattle too. When are you getting out of Seattle? Well, I'm not anytime soon. I live in one of the burbs and it doesn't have the same impact. So there's that. But Portland in general, yeah, there are some safer areas of Portland, but it's been impacted way more by this kind of stuff than Seattle has. San Francisco even has way fewer, probably I think about half of the murders. San Francisco is a way bigger city and it's got half of the murders that Portland does. So it kind of tells you what's going on. And then this act of revenge for something that happens in Atlanta, it doesn't happen in Atlanta, does it? No. I find that super interesting. Why not? Well, because they would put those people in jail forever for this type of activity. Whereas these guys know that they can go to Portland, do this, and claim, responsibility, claim being anonymous. They'll probably get found out. But even if they do, are they going to do much time? That's just not how, justice is going in Portland right now. It's not how it's going in Oregon in general in a lot of areas. So, you get out to some of the more rural areas, Southern Oregon, Eastern Oregon, it's a different story. It's Trump country, right? And people find that hard to believe. But same exact thing here in the state of Washington. You got Seattle, which is its liberal, utopia, such as it is. And then the further you go east, it's Trump country. You do not have a lot of blue east of the mountains. And when I say Trump country, I just mean it is more conservative and people, are on their own. They are responsible for their own safety. And, there's a lot of ranchers, you got farmers, you got self-employed people. They don't take the shenanigans of the city lightly. Yeah, they don't want to be there. They're like, nah, that's not really our thing. So you've got this dichotomy of big city, other areas of the state. We had, I think, the 12th area, or the 12th, was it county in Oregon, say, hey, we'd like to join Idaho. We'd like to secede from the Union and go join Idaho because of this kind of stuff here, where Antifa knows that it can basically get away with what it wants in Portland. I mean, some of the stuff that I saw, and I've talked about, probably dozens of times here on this podcast, that I saw it over the course of an evening and a couple of days in Portland during the summer of 2020. You're like, what planet am I on here? What is going on here? This is so not only bizarre, but dangerous and illegal, and just the utter, lack of law. Even though you're in an area, we've got a federal law building, and then you've also got the justice building right where all of this stuff is happening. But because city leadership in Portland, did what they did, and they went down these roads, it was the summer of love until it wasn't. And now you're dealing with the repercussions. And I think, this is why people hunker down in Portland and, burn a bank there versus burning a bank in Georgia, because they get a hold of you in Georgia. Things are going to be a little different, right? Domestic terrorism charges in Atlanta. Yeah, they're not going to tolerate this kind of stuff. In Portland can barely deal with day-to-day activities that are ongoing. They don't have enough cops. And you've just got all of these systems that are, in the process of basically failing, and leadership is trying to come up with something, anything. Leadership in Portland is continually doing a Hail Mary. Oh, let's see if this sticks. And, it's not going to, because the situation that's been created in Portland is such that, in my opinion, it's going to be here for a long time. It's going to take a long time to sort out what the actual solutions are. And a lot of them have to do with, you're going to have consequences, going to have some consequences for actions. You're going to have consequences for burning a bank. You're going to have consequences for reefing on a federal building. You're going to have consequences for, ripping off 7-Eleven. All right. And right now, that's just not happening. Till still some of that starts to happen, till you start to get a hold of the whole fentanyl issue. Because you don't have a homelessness issue. You've got a drug issue. I mean, that's just kind of where we're at, right? So all of those things. Yeah. So we go back to Portland and light a bank on fire. That's what we're doing. Crazy stuff, right? But is it so crazy? No, it's not. It's to be expected. This is kind of what we got. But don't forget, Antifa's a myth. Yeah. Interesting. All right. That's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.